Visualizing my life force. How do we ever conceive of that which we call our soul? What does it look like? How do we visualize it? There is no reason to believe that the soul lives contained within the body, other than that is how we have always thought of it. We know that we have an individuated life force because it is absent from our body after our earthly death. But whatever that life force is, often called the soul, there is a demonstrable evidence that the soul lives within the confines of the body. Let me do that paragraph again. That was wrong. But whatever that life force is that we call our soul, there is no demonstrable evidence that the soul lives within the confines of the body. It is certainly within it while we live physically, but we can certainly question whether it stops at the body's boundaries, our skin, or not. There is physical evidence of the individual soul. Human biological science has discovered that the molecules at the surface of the inner lining of the mouth change every 3 hours. The molecules of the outer layer of our skin change every 24 hours. 98% of our body was not here last year. Only some bones take longer to replace themselves than a year. Each human being takes in drink, food, and air in a continuous process of inculcating the molecular nourishment the body needs to replace itself. Similarly, the body is continually ridding itself of used molecules in numerous ways, not usually considered pleasant enough to be visually described here. If I take in a large volume of breath, I'm taking in trillions upon trillions of molecules. One could easily have been exhaled by a person in Mongolia yesterday, caught the jet stream, and I made me out of the leftover Mongolian today. Every physical molecule is composed of multiple atoms, every one of which is pushed into existence and sustained in existence by the One, which is that energy, intelligence, power, spirit, and life, which we usually call God, or a better word, a better description, I believe, is loving consciousness. And every one of those atoms is itself movable and interchangeable. A singular molecule could be used as a part of a planet, or it could be used by my life force, my soul, as a part of my body. All matter is interchangeable. My controlling element is my life force, my soul. And the soul does not live within the body, but rather the body lives within the soul. We have anecdotal evidence of the individual soul. In olden times, people who were recognized as particularly close to God, who were seen as exemplifying the attributes we believe God must have, were depicted in art as having halos. Light emanating from the head showed the power of that person's life force. This light shone from the head and not down upon it from some outer source's projected beam. It was painted as having no hard edges, rather as being brightest near the person's body and then gradually dissipating as it became more distant from the body. There was no outer edge. The light of the holy person's life force blended in with its surroundings and dissipated into them. A second anecdotal source for rethinking the idea of the soul living within the body comes from those who claim to see human auras. These people describe a similar occurrence, though over a larger area. They say that they see light emanating from the whole body, stronger around the head and trunk. In auras, once again, light is seen as coming from the area of the body and not contained within the confines of the person's skin. rather being bright in and around the body and getting more and more faint as it gets farther from the body. Even as it is no longer visibly evident, there is no hard edge, no ending to this light, but rather a melding into the ethereal light of its environment. Auras are part of parapsychology and some forms of spiritual practice, and are not universally scientifically accepted. They are described as fields of subtle, luminous radiation surrounding a person or object. Most practitioners do not claim that auras are actual light, but rather some form of unknown sensory readings that add to their visual processing. Apparently, auras are not seen in darkness and require some portion of the person or object to itself be physically seen. Thus, this anecdotal evidence is once again not scientific, but it's noted here because it has been a consistent part of human spiritual culture. There's also a kind of photography, Kirlian photography, which its students say can register the light of the energy put off by the soul. The results of Kirlian photography show the same general observation as auras and halos: light-like energy emanating from within the body and clearly strong around it, diminishing in power and brilliance as it distances itself from the body. Kirlian photography does not claim to take a picture of the soul, which is not physical, but only of the energetic output within the body. Kirlian photography is a kind of photogram made with high voltage. Semyon Kirlian accidentally discovered in 1939 that an object placed on a photographic plate, which is connected to a high voltage source, gives off small corona discharges. These are created by the strong electric field at the edges of the object and create an image on a photographic plate. Kirlian himself claimed that the images he created could be compared to the human aura, but this claim has never been scientifically proven. Nevertheless, studies continue into Kirlian photography, most notably in Russia, under Dr. Konstantin Korotkov, with whom I had a very rich and exciting discussion about this subject and its relationship to that which we call the soul. Dr. Korotkov uses GDV, which means gas discharge visualization, based on the Kirlian effect. His GDV instruments use glass electrodes to create a pulsed electrical field excitation called perturbation technique to measure electrophotonic glow. Let me do that again. Dr. Korotkov uses GDV, gas discharge visualization, based on the Kirlian effect. His GDV instruments use glass electrodes to create a pulsed electrical excitation called perturbation technique to measure electrophotonic glow. It's not the intention here to debate the merits of Kirlian photography or GDV, or for that matter the existence of auras or halos, but rather just to note the existence of several anecdotal indications of this resulting observation. Whatever energy lies within the body, apparently its life force, and called by humanity throughout known history as the soul, is powerful, even outside the confines of the body's physical limits, and has its influence, effects, and sustenance of place ever outward from its source. It does not appear to have an end, but rather to have its primary force situated at its core. From this, it seems plausible, in fact more plausible than the contrary view, to conclude this: the soul does not live within the body, but rather the body lives within the soul. So now let's imagine my individual life force, my soul, as a part of the whole which we call God. How can I see my soul within the wholeness that is God? How does it relate? How is it a candle in the sun or a drop in the ocean? Is it possible to picture or to imagine my eternal life force? Well, in a fashion, yes. Here's how I do it. Maybe it will work for you as well. Do you remember ever driving through what seemed like endless fog? You would sometimes go through portions of the fog so thick that you might have to open your car door and look at the lines on the street to make sure you weren't driving off the road. And then you would come to where the fog was lighter, was wispier. You could see much better, but you were aware that you were still within the fog. There were, within the totality of this fog, various parts that were more condensed than others, parts that were lighter, parts moderately thick, all connected within that vapor. Now imagine that instead of water vapor, this fog was energy or light. Also imagine that this light fog had no ending. It went on forever, and there was no place where it was not. Clearly, there was only one light, but it had various thicknesses in various places, trillions upon trillions of places where it was connected and maybe concentrated more brilliantly than in the overall wholeness of light. There were in this place of light no edges, no sealed off packets or packages. There were only individuated and start that paragraph over. There were in this place of light no edges, no sealed off packets or packages. There were only individuated and edgeless concentrations of the whole, each sustained within that whole and drawing its existence from that whole, each not the wholeness itself, but each a manifestation of the whole. In this visualization, each of those concentrations, those condensed portions of energy, light, would be a human soul. Each soul, then, is an individuated manifestation of the whole, the one, that which we call God. It is never separate from that wholeness, for it cannot be. It has no seams. I'm going to let that finish and then start that paragraph over again. It has no seams, no edges, no boundary where it clearly stops and some other begins. There is only one, yet there are also individuated life concentrations everywhere. Each of those concentrations of the one, each of those souls knows itself innately to be perfect, to be a part of that which it is, the one. Yet it only knows that in theory and not in practice. It yearns to experience what it is to be kind, to be loving, to be compassionate, to be forgiving, to be truthful, and all the other attributes of this loving oneness. And that is why the oneness, that which we call God, and others have called other names, exuded and sustains this physical universe, so that we can come here of our own free choice and have the opportunities to experience over a great period of time who we are. Each individuated manifestation of God, each concentration of energy, light, starts off knowing itself to be perfect, but with a blank slate of experience. In the course of its existence, it comes to the physical plane, probably hundreds upon hundreds of times, where it makes choices. Each of those choices allows that soul to experience the beauties and the joys of who it is, or the pain of who it is not. each allows that soul to progress into the experience of who it is. These experiences become each soul's memories, the unique journey throughout eternity, which continues to differentiate that soul from all the other energy light concentrations, which are choosing their own experiences and memories, contributing to their unique individuations of experiencing who they are. And that is the greatest miracle of all: existence, life, the one, and our being a part of it. P.M.H. Atwater, in her book, The Big Book of Near-Death Experiences, quotes Tanis Cruton of Vancouver, British Columbia, as she told of her afterlife death experience. This is her. Let me start that over again from PMH. PMH Atwater, in her book, The Big Book of Near-Death Experiences, quotes Tanis Cruton of Vancouver, British Columbia, as she told of her life after death experience. These are her words. Gradually, a light started to appear ahead of me. Very rapidly, I was enveloped within this most divine, living, golden white light, my home. The joy, bliss, humility, and awe were beyond human capability to bear. The light was an infinite, loving, accepting being without form. It had personality. It communicated with me telegraphically. Start that paragraph. It had personality. It communicated with me telepathically. It was pure truth. I was the light, and the light was me. I was still a unique, separate point of consciousness within the same sense of humor and awareness that I'd had always. But the paradox is that I was more. I had become homogeneous with the light. I was all love, wisdom, truth, peace, joy for all eternity. Human words fail to express this experience. Not only was the message of my true nature conveyed to me telepathically, but I experienced the spirit of the message. I felt it with every speck of my being. There was absolutely no possibility of hiding, distorting information, or lying and communicating with the light. I fell madly in love with the spirit of truth. There was no greater concept of space or time in the greater reality. Let me go back to that again. There was no concept of space or time in the greater reality. All takes place or exists in the eternal now.